Welcome to the Post Shift Podcast, your raw look at the hospitality industry, brought to you by SHC. What is happening, Post Shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. Today we're talking to Curtis McMillan, the Mischievous Mixologist. His brand new book just came out recently. Great little book. Like, I've started digging into it, and there's some great little nuggets for everybody who wants to give it a go. Just got to push some buttons here, and I think we are solid. Welcome to the show, Curtis.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. So I usually kick it off with how you started in the industry. You and I are pretty much in the same sort of realm of how long we've been doing this. And so we'll get into the Mischievous Mixologist. But how'd you get into the game of bartending?
Yeah, I started as a doorman. I'm huge. Every person that's ever worked with me in Boston behind the bars hates me because I'm built like a linebacker. I'm not built like a bartender. And all the wells in the city are like 3 inches, so you have to like climb over me. So I started on the door at a place called Harper's Ferry, which was like a music venue. It was owned by 2 Irish guys. And one of the Irish guys, his girlfriend at the time was the bartender, and she just randomly would not show up to work because she's like, I'm going to get fired. You know, like I'm good. She doesn't show up one day, and Connolly's freaking out. He's like, I need a bartender. And I was, I'll do it, not having any idea of what I was getting myself into. And I get my dick kicked in. It was terrible. It was awful. I made like double what I made as a door guy, and I was like, I'll do that again. That was awesome. Just kept picking up bar shifts. You get better with it. Like, it's like doing shot and a beer. It's very easy to get the rhythm of it without really having so more job. With all this extra, that I would go over to side and came. And I would Sundays had these blue cheese fries that I was like in love with, and they had a jukebox. There was like the most friendly person I'd ever met in my life, and he was like, "Oh, you're learn." He was like a drunk pusher and just books, and you know, at one. Yes, like he just kept fleeting, and I was like, "Holy shit, there's like a hole to this." He was like, "Oh, I'll train you. You know, come back and I'll show you the technique and the proper pour and using a jigger." And like, I was so blessed, and lucky to have such a good mentor and brother Cleve. He took me from obscurity. We would talk music. He would call me, I'd call him. It was like having a grandparent that was still alive, in the sense that like while he was alive, I would randomly. And if I had a beer and he'd be drinking at it, make him pay. But like it was like having a grandparent in the industry. It was amazing.
So when it comes to getting into bartending, in the book you've talked about like meeting David Wondrich and meeting Gaz Regan and that sort of thing. How did you get into tiki? Like, you're at Tiki Rock right now. How did you get into tiki?
Oh, it was Cleve. Cleve was the epicenter of tiki. There's pretty much nobody in the tiki world that doesn't know him. He really brought that kind of environment up to the Northeast. And I would say he was the champion of keeping a lot of the original tiki bars alive by funneling young blood into it. I mean, in that kind of way that he was a pusher, that he would get you to fall in love with him. And then in return, he'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to be at the Kowloon this week, you know, like, and all of my friends are going to show up." And he'd have like 45 people rolling into the Kowloon. And like that kind of every time you saw him, he was in a tiki shirt. If he was DJing, he was probably playing Exotica. You know, like he was very tiki in origin, and I think that it just rubbed off. I don't think I'm as tiki as he is. Style, and his always. I kept the long running notion that Southern California punk rock of the 80s is tiki, and he would give me so much and he'd be like, "It's not," and I'd be like, "It's surf rock, it's modern surf rock." I'm like, "Punk rock is tiki," and he would just give me tons and tons of shit about it. But yeah, I would say that my mentorship with Cleve is what helped tiki.
So with tiki, has definitely evolved over the last couple of years. How have you seen, especially in Boston, tiki evolving with conversations behind appropriation and everything else? Like, how have you seen tiki evolving into the modern style that we're seeing now?
It's really interesting in Boston because we have 3 different aspects of tiki in the city alone. We have Shore Leave, which is like a vacation bar. They don't refer to them as tiki. All intensive purposes, I think when they started, they were tiki, but it's a beautiful establishment that themselves is because they're of the mindset that they don't want to have an association with appropriation. Okay. We have Woosong Road at the other side over in Cambridge that is 100% a tiki bar. They are tiki mugs. They are Exotica. They are a tiki bar. And then you have me in the middle, and everybody like doesn't know what to do with me because I'm the equivalent of when a tiki bar gets smushed into a nightclub and what that looks like. And it's weird because it's like you have people on both sides of the field that look at the non-appropriation travel bar or vacation bar, whatever you want to call it, and they say that's the right way to do things. And I get that. There's certain parts of it I get, and like appropriation is bad. I think that like we need to modernize those things and move forward. And then like you go to the Woosong thing, and like I like that stuff too. I like the escapism, and for me it doesn't feel as much like appropriation. It feels more like Disney. Like when you go to Disney World, like there's a lot of appropriation in Disney World, but like it's vacation. It's like it's youthful, kind of like I'm escaping, like the Enchanted Tiki Room is a byproduct memory of childhood. And like I remember when I was a little kid going to tiki bars with my dad and my grandparents. So like there's a part of that I think that like it is cultural appropriation, but at the same time, like it's also it's a part of American, like it's interwoven in American history. So it's like just completely discarding it, it just feels weird. I don't know if I have like a dog that like tiki mugs. I carry them and I love tiki shirts. All Cleve warm day of his life. But musical standpoint, we're not playing Exotica. I mean, I have Latin and reggae playing most of the time in my place. I don't know.
How many seats do you have at Tiki Rock? You were saying like a nightclub style.
Yeah, we're 215, and we do a little bit of the table shuffle in the sense that like as we go from late night menu, or we go late night food to late night entertainment, some seats get pulled out, some tables get pulled out, like it's interesting because the way that the place is laid out is very lounge style. So like it doesn't really need a lot of rearranging to make it go from being one animal to another. The biggest problem that we have, and it comes up all the time, is that people that expect us to be the traditional tiki bar, as it crashes into nightclub, there's no way to prepare people or make people happy when the allure is like gone, and then all of a sudden there's 1,000 people are asking for like vodka tonics,
So it was my next question. How do you balance out that like 8-9 touch tiki cocktail sort of mentality when you've got 215 seats?
I think it's interesting is that like during the day we have very few problems with our bartenders not being able to build drinks in a timely manner. We had talked about batching, and honestly, we should probably be doing it for some things, but like the evening clientele doesn't order from the cocktail menu. They predominantly want drinks. They want, like Hennessy and pineapple. They want tequila. They want super simple, everything off the gun, and but like at the same time, like our menu's still there. Like I know that we're still selling Mai Tais up until like 2 a.m, So it's one of those things where I've yet to see if I felt like it was crushing my bar and it was a big, might probably end up going to batching, but I don't really notice it being an issue because it's like once the clientele switches, so does the taste of what they want.
Yeah, that's it. That's interesting because like it is, what do you want your place to be, and how do you want your place to be perceived by the guest? And you've got the early clientele who want all tiki, and then the next 3-4 hours is just vodka sodas.
Yeah, and I get a lot of flack for that. I get a lot of flack that we're not a tiki bar, we're a tiki bar, and it kind of hurts. And I get it. At the same time, I am working with is that we've become, like period of time. I think when we opened, they were a tiki bar, okay, and as that started to die away, maybe management left, maybe bar management, and it like the program kind of slumped. There was a period there where they would bring in new management that didn't tiki bar. So what they did is they started running it like a nightclub, and it became a nightclub that kind of crashed into that tiki bar. And when I got it, the owner or the general manager was Rob, and it was losing money hand over fist.
Was it still called tiki? Was it still called Tiki Rock at that time?
He had like chips on the menu, like 50. He desperately wanted it to just be an Irish pub, and I thought if he just grinded it into the ground, that they would just build him an Irish pub. And like, I don't think that were going to happen. So when I just looked at the situation, I go, "This is a nightclub. It's just it turns into a nightclub, and then on revising the tiki bar, the menu, and we've been doing that. And now we're up, for the first time in like 4 years, the plan up."
With your cocktail menu and developing a cocktail, do you keep with the classics mainly, or do you have a selection of originals on there too?
We've got some classics, mostly just out of the habit of it would seem sacrilegious like not to have classics at a tiki bar, but I think that and ingenuity is always like spur my forehead. The entire menu, the QR codes, another being tiki. Like almost every tiki bar has a beautiful, well designed like paper menu that is like hand painted, and it's, you know, very labor intensive and costly. And most of the time, if you look at most of those menus, they're somebody, usually Bacardi. Bacardi comes in and they go, we'll pay for lots of menus and we'll help out with the design of it, and blah, blah, blah. But like cocktails need to be Bacardi cocktails. And I, over years, like years and years of doing this job, I've come to the mindset that selling my menus doesn't really give the customer the best, the best options. So we went to QR code and we do bento box. And what that does for me is it makes me very fluid. So if I want to run a special for the week, and then when that special runs out, I can just pull it off of the bento box and is none the wiser. You know, like everything is constantly evolving and changing. Like I go to Toast every week, and then I look at what the winners and the losers are in sales categories, and usually who's ever in the loser category of things, I'll just pull the cocktail out, build something new, and put that in there instead.
That's very cool. Yeah, we've got two places in town. One is a very hardcore tiki bar, and then the other has been very, very good. And I like the term vacation bar. It's called Citrus and Cane. No tiki mugs, but every drink is on point. Every drink is like perfect. It's sort of like a 1950s, 1960s New York Don Draper style, like tropical bar.
Yeah.
So
Shore Leave is very much like that. Yeah.
Let's talk about Mischievous Mixologist. What's the driver behind writing this?
God. So I was working for the Marriott at their Moxie property, and strangely enough, there was a thing where there needed to be a manager on duty at all times, and we were open like from 5 o'clock in the morning till like 10 o'clock at night. So we had to split the managerial duties between a morning shift and an evening shift. And we wanted the morning shift. Everybody else was like 20 years old. They wanted to get in at 5. They wanted to get out at 10. And I'm old. So I was like, I'll go in at eve afternoon. It's awesome to me. So I would go in and I would do paperwork and things like that. But for the most part, I didn't have really any beverage stuff that I had to do. Like I could bang it out in a couple hours. I could do the story. I could do the order. I could do, you know, all the stuff that I needed to do. And then I have like 6 hours where I'm just sitting there staring at my laptop. And in this time period, I had befriended an owner in the city, and I was reading the local trade paper, the Boston Business Journal, and he had a restaurant. When I first moved to Massachusetts, it was the very that I ever ate at. One of the oldest German restaurants in the city. The wood floors had a smell and a patina to them. This place had been there. It was the second oldest restaurant in Boston. And when I ate there, it was it made me feel like this is what old Boston feels like, you know? And he bought that building. Building had been vacant for 9 years. Just finished doing a construction. He was getting ready to open. So I called him up while I was at the Moxie, and I was like, I don't care who you GM, it's me. Like, friends, I've been waiting for this for 9 years. I want this job at Jacob Worth. And I was like, I'll take a pay cut. I don't care what it is. It felt to me very coming full circle in the fact that, like, this is the first restaurant I ate at, and now I'm going to be in charge of it. And my mentality on the situation was that when I go into Jacob Worth, I am going to make this my lifetime job. This is where I'm going to be for the rest of my life. And he goes, it's all yours. I love you. You start in 3 months. And, 3 months got pulled out to like almost a year because the property was a national historical site. So they, like everything, anything that would have taken a week to do took like a month to do because they had to go back to the historical society. They had to approve it and, yada, yada, yada. So I am working all the mornings at the Moxie. I have a bunch of dead time. I start writing what was going to be the handbook for Jacob Wirth. And I just put together little snippets of things, the way that I would want things to be done. And, anecdotes and stories about people that are important to me. And I was doing about 1,000 words a day. And then all of a sudden I looked up and I'm like a quarter way through what felt like a book. And I was like, I think this feels like a book. I reached out to Barbara, who's been a lifelong friend of mine. We've just been super, super close. I sent it to him and I go, is this a book? He reads through it and he goes, it's not just a book. I was like, oh, okay. Well, then I should probably finish this. And he goes, if you finish it, I'll do the forward. And I go, dude, you don't have to do that. And he's like, no. We're friends. I would ask you to do it for me. Okay, so I finished the book, and to effect that, like, I'm not really a writer. I'm super dyslexic. I'm not good at this stuff. Like, at no point at high school level, college level, being like, Curtis is going to write a book. Like, no, they were like, Jesus Christ, like, can this kid just turn in paperwork? Like, can he pass school? So the fact that I finished it, it feels surreal. Like, it doesn't even feel like I did that. Like, I look at it now on the table and I'm just like, I know it's a book, but I don't feel like I did that. Like, in the editing process, had to read it a bunch of times. And I think there's a point when you've built the cover, the book's done editing, you put the pieces all together and you just hand it out to the world and you're like, okay, I hope you guys like this. And there's a moment where you feel like it's like sending your kids off. You don't know what to do anymore. Like, I'm at that point now where I'm like, I have it, and I have people that always come up to me and they're like, hey, can I get your autograph in this? I'm like, great. And I feel like imposter syndrome with that situation. I'm like, that's what famous people do. I don't do that.
So it's been well received.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that has got the book really have a lot of people that are, I look up to that have said that it was really fantastic. It feels, I don't know. Sometimes it's like I have really nice friends, like I have people that treat me really nicely. And sometimes I wonder if they'll, pat Curtis on the head, like, nice job. I don't know. But like, there's been authors come back and told me like certain aspects of it, the small fragmented Black Flag kind of punk rock style of the book in general is kind of unique to the cocktail, in the fact that it's not so refined. Like, all my thought processes are like all over the place. I kind of work that way in real life, so like there's not really any disconnect. Like when you go into most books, they're so refined and they're so detail oriented, and I am so scatterbrained and I'm so like in the moment. But I felt like a lot of the information that I was disseminating was important because it's stuff that like I wish told me, and it felt like the book. I felt like that was his purpose. I had an idea for another book that at some point I might bang it out, but the basic idea behind this was I've done this for 30 years. I feel like I'm pretty good at this. Everybody seems to like the things that I do. Let's just tell somebody else how to do that. And that's what it felt like.
No, I like it because I've always got a million things on the go. The way my brain works, like I like the fact that it's nice, short, to the point chapters, and then
Yeah.
the next chapter hooks you real quick. It's not something like this, like 7 to 8 pages long for a chapter, and you're like, at the end of the chapter, you're like, I'm exhausted, I'm done, and then you
Yeah.
try and get the hook for the next chapter. Like every chapter, like sort of, I banged out like 4 or 5 like chapters while I was waiting for you to come on today. You've had some great experiences when it comes to like David Wondrich and Gaz. Gaz is a very old friend of mine. Bless his
You
heart.
got fingers. You got fingers stirred too.
Actually, I was lucky enough to be there for the very first finger stirred Negroni. So I was actually in France, bar backing for Duff and Gaz when the very first finger stirred Negroni. And the reason why it came about was because we were at this little tiny bistro in Cognac, and they didn't have bar equipment. So we were building all these drinks, and there was no bar spoons. And so Gaz is like, "Fine, done." Starts just banging them out. Like, so I think Javine and Duff own the NFT. They've NFT'd the picture of that occasion when the very first Gaz Reagan Negroni was actually finger stirred.
Yeah.
So he was always cool.
I didn't go as in depth in the book because I think it makes me sound ridiculous, but I'll give you how I met Gaz. So I was working for William Grant and as a supplier, and there was a summit that was taking place, and they were doing a different location. One locations come and meet Gaz. I'd never met him. I had read his book, but I wasn't. I think I remember seeing of him, and he looked like a lumberjack in the picture, like Sevjack. So I'm sitting at the event, and he comes and sits next to me, and he's little, almost, I would say pretty much a goth. And I was like, "Hi, my name's Curtis." And he was like, he's ridiculous to me. He didn't even say that his name was Gaz. And at this, like, throwing jabs and like giving him a hard time. And I think that he was almost I think he liked me because I didn't know who he was. And I made such a fool out of myself at this point. I'm like, man, this Gary guy must be really fucking late. And he's like, he just starts chuckling and like going and just jamming my foot deeper and deeper into my mouth. And then he, in the almost just perfect manner, every time after that, he's like, "You know, it's me now." And like, he would just give me shit constantly. And like, I just like, I loved him for the fact that like, even though I acted like a complete buffoon, he remembered that and held that over my head the rest of his life.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
How do you balance out, like, you've got Tiki Rock, you just did the book. How long did it take to do the book? Because you sort of mentioned that it was over a period of time. How long did it take you to write the book from start to finish?
I finished it in 9 months.
Okay.
Yeah. So like the process of just doing the 1,000 words a day, and like some days that I would just be in a rhythm and I would go deeper. I had probably 40% more book that got chopped off. There was some stuff in there that felt vindictive. There was some stuff in there that felt, I don't know. Over a lifetime of doing this, sometimes you can get a little petty. And I, in my head, heard Eve be like, "You're better than that." So like, I chopped stuff off. But for the most part, rearranging chapters that felt like they were like duplicates of themselves, that happened. They're a little different, but the idea felt the same. The only chapter that I had in the book that was kind of funny was book, I think I'm almost ready to go to editing. And one of my good friends is like, "You wrote a book?" And I was like, "Yeah, I wrote a book." And he's like, "Am I in it?" And I was like, "Actually, you're not in the book." And he's like, "I will do anything if you put a chapter in the book about me." And I was like, "Okay." So like I hit the typewriter and I wrote it out, and it was not the nicest in the sense that like it was very realistic to the point of how it affected the bar community. It's the chapter by Scott and
Yeah, I read that
how
one.
yeah. And like when I gave it back to him, he was like, "I don't know how I feel about this. Give me 24 hours." And he come back and he had let us read it. He was like, "Exactly who you are." And he's like, "That's exactly what this is." And like it was interesting because it's like I flipped a mirror on him. He wanted to be in there, so I flipped the mirror on him, and then he was, that makes total sense, and it's totally an on point. And like it's interesting because it's like the aspect of having that crazy person in the bar never makes any sense. It's almost impossible by that. You're like, go my life terrible. They're gonna like never show up to work on time. They're gonna like do crazy things, and like I don't know how I'm gonna handle it. And then the minute you do it, everybody loves that person. The entire staff rallies behind that person. It makes no sense, but it just works. And I needed that to be in the book because every place that I've worked at has had that Scott. You know, like they've had that crazy person, and I think that it loves that person for just that energy. And I think your staff needs that person because when you're in the weeds, it makes it not feel as bad. So like it was one of those things where it's like, "Yeah, Scott, you're a maniac. Here's the mirror." And he was like, "Oh." And then he gave it 24 hours and came back and he was like, "You're right." And I was like, "Yeah." But, like it's the chapters like that that I think make the book special because it's like, I've read thousands of cocktail books and I don't think that that's ever existed in any of them.
Mm. Yeah, I think sometimes as an industry we try and be a little bit more professional when really in the core, the raw, the raw elements of the industry is very, very far from professional, especially maybe a little bit different to these days, but like 15, 20 years ago, like professionalism was sort of like a soft word in our industry.
Oh yeah, it felt like it felt like a necessity. I mean, mixology in general is this like evil word now that is a byproduct of like hoity-toity, almost higher than bartending. And I think that that's changing. I think that like the consumer is like, yeah, it's a great drink, it's $30, and like I would rather have just had like 3 high noons. Like it's getting to that point where we're running out of steam in that segment and that thought process. I think that there is something to be said about the fact that like I appreciate what that is in the same way that I appreciate art from different types of segments. Like you can appreciate classic art for what it is, but it had its moment. And then modern art came in. And I think that we're in a transitional state right now in the bar industry that really is starting to scare me because you have a lot of new young talent that really don't have a focus. And I think that their thought process is that they are going to build without any thought of how they're going to expand. I just got back from Kentucky a couple weeks ago. I taught a class on how to elevate from being a good bartender to being a star bartender. And the whole class was on that topic. And it was a chance for me to have a conversation with the class that's like 3 behind me, in the sense that like these kids are all like 25, 28. and I just put it out on the table that, like, push this forward. We need to have people that are pushing the industry forward, and they need to find the next thing. And it might not be inventing an entire style, it's to be, putting forth the work and the effort to do something that it affects all of us. The way that Brad Soole put together the espresso martini, and now it's everywhere in the world. Like that thought process that you could create something that everybody is universally loved by. I think that we need to start thinking of that and what this next generation is going to do, or what type of place they're going to run, or the kind of place that they want to see as the next generation of places. And I just put that out on the table. That's basically what the class was about. And I think that the reception from them was really strong. I mean, I had a lot of people come to me later on that night, and they were just like, that really touched me. It really put into, it put the pieces together that, like, I need to step it up, because no one says that. And, like, it wasn't a class on a technicality or a science or a process. It was about growing their own brand and being bigger than the bar. And I think that that's a super important part of what needs to happen, in the same way that, like, if I put all these pieces out there, like, take the pieces, get better, but become better than me. Like, do what it takes to be the best, and to be the next Dick Bradsall, to be, the next Morgenthaler, to be the next Brother Cleve. Like, that's what we need.
Did Brother Cleve get a chance to read the book?
No, he passed before it had happened. Me and him, what was the last thing that we had even talked about? Oh, I had called him, and he wasn't feeling well. And we were talking about him going to the doctors and getting it taken a look at. And he was like, I've got so much on my plate, I don't have time to. And I was giving him a hard time about, just spending time making sure that he, got checked up on, and kind of, just like the same thing you'd do with your grandparents. You'd call and be like, like, how's grandpa? And he's like, oh, my leg. Rah, rah, rah. Be like, well, you need to get that looked at. And, like, like, from his standpoint, he was like, why is Curtis always giving me a hard time? And, like, it was nice in the sense that, like, I could call him at any point of the time, ask him questions, just check up on him. And then when he was gone, he's still in my phone, and it has a kind of haunting feeling to it, that it's like, I haven't been able to call that number, but it's still there. So it's weird. It's, I miss the shit out of him. I know that if he had seen the book, he'd have been proud of me. I think that he would have, if he would have been still alive, he would have definitely been the person that wrote the foreword. And he would have also wanted to sit down and drink all my cocktails and give me his critiques on them, because that's how he was with anything that I did. But I think that he accomplished his goals in life, in the sense that he built an army of people that will never forget him, and are, growing what it is that he loved based off of his introduction to those things.
So, for anyone picking up the Mischievous Mixologist for the first time, what's the one takeaway you want for people to take away from the book when they read it?
I would say, I think that authenticity is important. And I think that if you don't view yourself as a mixologist, if you don't view yourself as a dive bartender, if you feel like you feel differently in that position, if you feel like you grew up, I don't know, like if you grew up, you want to be, the world's best furry bartender, like have authenticity to that and like own that and put that to a way that your community will be able to look at that and be like, yep, that's definitely Curtis, like who he is. And I think that if you're being authentic with the world and you put that out there, I think that they'll appreciate that and it's different. I think that our industry has, I think that there need people like Yaz who were very unique, like we need people like Wondrich who are completely unique, in that realm of the historian. There's people that are, they're good, but they're just not him. And I think that like I've met a lot of people in my life who are very unique in our industry, and I want people to learn that and being yourself is more important than being, a copy of what you think we all want you to be.
So, because we're at the stage of the interview that I always do 5 deep podcast questions at the very end.
Yeah.
So, what is the one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in life?
Shaped my experience. Oh God, it's so weird because it's like I've had all these like really amazing moments in my life that have shaped me, from the birth of my son to, watching Black Flag play in a tiny like basement in Colorado to, being part of the rave scene here in New England and watching the sun come up while, like Diesel Boy and Dara play. And, like there's just been all these really interesting moments in my life that have made it to where I have strove to strove Nostrovia to facilitate the party. I think that that's probably where everything came from. I was always trying to toss the party. I always liked being in charge of the party when I was younger. And I think that that shaped my life, that working in this industry, it is a party. So I've spent 40 years trying to facilitate a good party for people. And I think that that's the big takeaway from everything is that, love me or hate me, I throw a really good party because I've done it for a really, really long time.
If you could leave one lasting message or piece of wisdom for the world, what would it be and why?
I would say that we misunderstand hospitality. And I think that culturally, especially as being Americans, we think that it is being nice to the people that we want to be nice to instead of being nice to everybody. And I think that we need to learn that abroad, everybody understands the hospitality a little bit better than us, in the sense that I will strive, even knowing that I'll probably get burned or I'll get scammed, that I will strive to make everybody feel special. And I think that we in this industry think that that's where we're at when we say that we are providing hospitality. But I think that there's a lot of pettiness that is not necessary. And I would like to see all of us understand that we can go deeper. And I think that that would make it better for everybody.
Looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you had understood earlier in life?
If I had to go back and do this all over again, I would have probably not spent time as a supplier. Sounds crazy because it's like you get weekends off and the pay is awesome. But I would have just spent all the time just working in an establishment. I would have probably saved so that I could open my own place. I think my true passion and love is in a building, but I think that the takeaway is that the enticement of working for liquor companies is so great, and it's like the travel and it's the getting to meet people, and the 90% of the people I met in the book were because I was a supplier. But I think that if I had just focused and spent my time in an establishment, I'd probably be running one that was my own at this point.
How do you define success, and has your definition of it changed over time?
Honestly, I don't think it's changed much. I think that my version of success has always been based on that. If I look at you and I admire you, I look at that as success. Like, it doesn't really mean that every part of your life is successful and that makes that success. It's that I think that something that you're doing is better than I could ever do it. Like, well, I'll use Wondrich's writing style and his ability to conjure ideas and thoughts, and his analytical mind on searching through the past and digging up artifacts is so much more creative and just detailed and beautiful than anything that I do. And I look at him as extremely successful because he's so much farther ahead of me in the game than I will probably ever be. And that to me has always been the same. Like, even when I was younger and I was an artist, I would look at other artists and I would be, it would almost make me want to quit doing art because I'm like, oh, I'm never going to be as good as that person. Like that thing that they did was unbelievable. And then, like, you get into the bartending scene and you meet guys like Steve Snyder and you're just like, I don't think I'm ever going to be this good. Like, like, it's just, that's the level that you just set for all of us. Like, damn, that's not fair. And you meet people like Morgenthaler and you're like, can you just stop being nice for like 10 seconds? Like, can you just like be a jerk for two minutes to somebody? Like, that kindness and his unwavering dedication to like disseminating knowledge is just so beautiful that it's like, I don't know if I can ever be that dedicated. Like, dude, you win, you get the gold star. And like, like Ezra and, Ivy and like all of these people who are just so successful and so talented. And I think that my viewpoint on success has always been just looking at the people ahead of me.
Nice. What do you hope your legacy will be, and what steps are you taking to build it?
Oh, so that's a good question. I'm going with Cleve's game plan because he was always so good with everything. I try to do mentorship. I'm trying to learn how to be a better mentor. I am trying to teach as much as possible, trying to get the word out as much as possible on being creatively unique. And I think that that's where my legacy lies, is that when it's all done and they close the book, I think most people that know me will say that I strove, we're back at it again, to have a good party, and I wanted everything to be special, and I wanted everybody to feel special. And the parties that I provided were unique, and the concepts were different, and it felt different. I think that that's the big takeaway from all of this is that I worked really, really hard to give people individuality.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, Mischievous Mixologist, best place to go is Amazon.
Yeah. Amazon's where it's at.
If you're watching or listening to this, it'll be in the link in my bio as well. So I've got a copy straight up link to Amazon for that as well. Curtis, thank you so much for your time, man. I think it's the bartender in me. Like, I'm a massive fan of like Toby Caccini's Cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
And this is very, very similar to that. That sort of like anecdotal sort of, this is my life and this is the true story of what I've gone through. So I really appreciate your time, man. I thank you very, very much.
No, it's all good. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man. Well, you have a good day and I'll chat to you very soon.
Word.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye.
Okay, mate. Thanks for listening, Pose Shifters. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy sitting down with friends and peers and just chatting about the industry and getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's really going on out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, everything on all the platforms. Just hit it up and I'll do my best to answer any queries or questions you have. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.